Hey guys, so last time we were talking about the game design document and how it not only helps you to plan out the game, but also how it helps you organize your game. Well, organization is pretty important in nearly every aspect of game making. And so I wanted to talk about how important it is uh, and how it can help you improve your workflow. So the first thing you think about when I say organization should be file management. You want to make sure all of your assets are together in one easy place to find. It's tremendously difficult to know what you're looking for and know where to find it when you have 1,000 different files in 1,000 different locations. It's just not good. You waste a lot of time looking for things when it could just all be in one spot. But also you want to make sure that you name things appropriately because even if it's all in one spot, maybe I don't know what texture 001 is. What does that go to? Does it go to the main character? Does it go to a tree? I don't know. So you want to name things appropriately. You can also name your assets actually inside a lot of the programs that you work with. So if you're a modeler, for instance, and you're using 3ds Max, 3ds Max has a way that you can name your assets inside of that program. It naturally names things as box 01 or sphere 01, but you can actually go in and change it so that it's easier for you and it's also easier for other people who need to go in and reference those named objects. For programmers, you want to make sure that your code makes sense to other people. Whether you're working with someone or whether you just plan on maybe showing it to an employer in the future, you want to not only make sure that it looks nice and makes sense, but you also want to make sure that you program it in such a way that if you need to go back in and change something later, you don't have anything that's hard coded into the system. So you want to make sure that everything works well together in that sense. Um, Backups, of course, are important because you never know when something's going to crash. Just earlier this year, I actually lost a hard drive of mine, and I had backed it up 2 years ago and ended up losing 2 years worth of work. That's not good. Of course, you also never know when you might have a power outage or something. And so you want to save often. You want to keep backups in places that you can restore those later if you need to. Keeping versions is extremely important because, again, you might have some kind of crash or some kind of bug that happens. And sometimes it's easier to simply go back to a previous version and sort of start over almost, not quite, but it's easier to sometimes get rid of bugs that way rather than spending hours trying to figure out why it's there and why it's not going away. But if you do that, you want to make sure that everyone on your team is aware that you're going back to a previous version. Because if you've got one person who's working on version 1.2 and another person who's working on 2.5, then the changes that they make may not go together, they may not work together, and now you've both just wasted time working on something that's not going to work in the end. Now, that kind of takes care of a lot of the technical stuff, but there's other places where organization can also really benefit your team, such as communication. It is extremely important, and I cannot stress how important it is to actually talk to your team because you never know when one person might be working on an asset and the other person goes, "Oh, well, is that done yet? I don't know. Maybe I should start working on it." And now you've got people overlapping on the work, and you've got other stuff that perhaps could completely go unworked on. Uh, so you want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. It's tremendously helpful to make sure everyone knows their deadline, and it's good to make sure that everyone knows what you want things to look like because they may start coming up with their own ideas and start doing stuff that you don't want in your game, right? Um, if you're not the one in charge, you want to make sure to pass off your work before you move on to the next stage. So modelers, you want to make sure to finish your model and then get it passed off before you start texturing and animating it. Because it's really hard on a lot of things to go back and fix things after you've already progressed 5 steps ahead. You want to be able to divide things into small goals, small checklists, which is what the game design document helped with, but you can go even farther than that. In the game design document, we talked about splitting things into areas or levels. We'll now take that and split it down even farther. If I'm working on area 1, what stuff goes into area 1? And speaking of areas also, you want to make sure that everyone is working on the same area, simply because, especially if you have a time schedule, you don't want everyone to be working on area 1 except for the one guy who's working on level 20, because if you're working on a time schedule, he may never get to level 20. He may never get it finished, or you may never get up to level 20, and you may end up having to cut it, and now that person has spent all this time and effort making something that's never going to be in the final game. And especially if you've got people working on all different levels, then that's more time spent trying to get one level done because not everyone's helping, and then nothing ever gets done. So it's really good to divide everything into small goals, make sure everyone's working on the same thing, make sure everyone knows exactly what their job is, and make sure they all get it passed off. Those are all some great things that I think people tend to overlook, especially when you're working in a group. So hopefully this has helped you out at least a little bit. There's probably 1,000 other places where organization could be helpful. And if you have any particular examples of that, I'd love to read them in the comments below. If you feel like there's something I missed or something else that you want me to talk about, also leave that in the comments below. And I'll see you next time.